We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway in Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Welcome in. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a PATC legend. In the comments, in the chat room, or with phone calls later in the show. We're not talking about Mel Tucker being fired today. We knew that was going to happen. We have covered that story. We're not going to cover it anymore, other than the fact that Michigan State Hot Board 2.0 will be coming out soon here at Peek Around the Corner. And that is the next big story in that saga. We covered the Mel Tucker. So if you've come here to talk more Mel Tucker, that's just not what's going to happen. We also talked about last night, the PATC community made their picks against the spread. So did I. We talked about, and we're going to continue to talk about Week 5 football games as the days continue on this week. We're going to be doing a live watch party Saturday night, Duke and Notre Dame. But today, you got to keep your head on a swivel. You have to keep your head on a swivel. Today, we're talking about ACC drama. The Holy Smokes Theater. We just had Act 3. Act 3 just started yesterday. Act 4 is starting today. Now, there was an article. I know a lot of people haven't read it. We're going to be going through it. the Post and Courier by Gene, and I apologize if I get the last name incorrect. Sapakoff. Somebody in the phone calls later in the show can tell me how to pronounce it, and I'll still get it wrong. I don't mean to insult anybody, but as you know, I don't speak very well. So Gene wrote this article in the Post and Courier, Greenville, South Carolina, Charleston, that area. I have been working on this story early in the morning. Now, I put out a tweet a couple hours ago telling people I'm working on the Clemson story. I'm working on it. Okay, I'm working on it. This monologue's going to last a little bit here. Okay, so please, everybody, please be patient. Been working on this story. In general, there's a lot of interesting things to this story, and we're going to get to it. We're going to go through the whole article. I provided a link in the description. You can read the whole article, but since you are in the chat room, since you're watching the show, why don't you just stay with me and we'll break this down, and then you can comment on it and give us a phone call. We're going to be on as long as needed this afternoon to make sure everybody can express what they're thinking, what they've changed in their thinking. But there's a couple interesting aspects to this story. One is, I have poked and I have prodded. We have been very fortunate here at Peek Around the Corner, as you know, with the USC story, the Colorado story, Oregon, Washington. Our Rolodex have gotten a little bit bigger since we broke the USC story March 31st, 2022. And we were fortunate to be in the Los Angeles Times and all that. I'm going to tell you something right now. We have been working on this story for a little bit over 5 hours. And we have yet to get any major pushback on the story. Now, that doesn't mean it's still not coming. And as we do this live show, I'm going to be checking my phone, and I might be interrupting you all with information. People are scrambling. Thank you so much for the super chat, John. Tulane, Memphis, South Florida, UConn, and batter box for ACC. Okay. Thank you for the super chat, John. Let's get through this. All that is very interesting, but let's get through. You're right, though, John. You're absolutely right. Backfield would be needed. But let's get through the story, and we'll get into all that, John. There's a lot to it, but thanks, John, for the super chat. Those are 4 good candidates, John. No question about it. You have put some thought into that. Gorb, thank you for the super chat. Good afternoon, Greg. God bless. God bless you. Appreciate it. So I might get pushback. Sure. I just haven't received it yet. And it hasn't been because I haven't tried to get pushback. In other words, what I mean by pushback is, Greg, this is somebody shooting in the dark. Oh, Greg, this guy is over his skis a little bit. Oh, Greg, the timing ain't right. Just yesterday, we said that Notre Dame has just went into the Holy Smokes Theater for the very first time, and they're sitting in row 5. And Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, and NBC is sitting in row 6. And everybody else is basically in the front foyer of the theater, not even through the front doors. And Florida State, of course, is on the edge of the stage. What is fascinating about this story is it's Clemson. It's Clemson. Again, I know most of you haven't read the story. We'll get into it, but I want to set this table for you on why this is so important and why we're doing a noon or 1 o'clock Eastern show for you today. It's Clemson. Don't get this wrong. Don't get this wrong. I'm not taking any shots at Clemson. I'm not taking any shots at Florida State, North Carolina, nobody. When I say the following, these schools are different from each other. Yes, Clemson and Florida State, they've been talking. Of course they have with each other. But they're different. We have been told this for a solid year from more than one group of sources. They do things differently than each other. There's different personalities. They run their boards differently. Again, not a shot at Florida State, not a shot at Clemson. But they're different. And if this story, which we're about to go through, holds true, or 90% of it holds true, or 60% of it holds true, then this is significant. Because it means that Clemson, taking this issue in a completely different way, has come to the same conclusion as Florida State. And a group of ACC schools are about to bum rush the ACC to grab a settlement to get out of the ACC. Thank you, John Till, for the super chat. Or Fresno, San Diego State for a full West Wing. That could be in play too. Thanks once again, John. I appreciate your generosity to the show to help us keep the lights on in the studio. And again, we'll get to that. So, as I poked and prodded so far this morning, it seems to be the consensus that everything is sort of playing into each other. This is a snowball effect. There is worry from Notre Dame that NBC isn't willing to play ball at the level that Notre Dame needs to happen to remain independent under the NBC umbrella. There is worry that the ACC could have this implosion in which the ACC remains, but they lose their top brands, and then the schedule that Notre Dame has with ACC gets completely devalued. And Notre Dame will just not be able to maintain the value in their media deal to sustain independence. And then, of course, is the question of the settlement. If a whole bunch of schools go at it at once, you also have, trying to get a settlement with the ACC, you also have the example of Washington State and Oregon State. They're sitting on a pile of money, but it looks like they're about to lose their Autonomy 4 status, which would affect them when it comes to playoff distribution money. What if you're Boston College, Wake Forest, and a few other ACC schools, and you have the opportunity to not only grab bags of cash with settlements of North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State leaving the ACC, but you also maintain Power 4 status to get the highest level of playoff distribution money coming up in the new expanded playoffs? What if you could get both? There is so many things that they're interlocking each other. The Holy Smokes Theater. We are ready to say that Florida State is at the center of the stage. That Clemson is now at the edge of the stage. They're standing up there and they're at the edge of the stage. North Carolina is in the front row. Notre Dame is in the 5th row. 6th row is Tony Petitti and NBC. And in the 15th row, we're going to include the rest of the Magnificent 7 schools. North Carolina State, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Miami of Florida. There's a lot of, again, the pressure of consolidation. The schools that are interested, knowing that they could challenge for the national championship, be at the highest level of college football, those schools, they're willing and ready to try to jump to the SEC of the Big Ten, even if they get an Oregon and Washington type of deal, because they are in the boat. For the other schools, have the incentive to try to maintain their autonomy for status. And then you have the media companies that might be, again, willing to play along with consolidation, because look at the ratings. Look at the ratings that are going to come next year. Just look at the Big Ten example. So the pressure of consolidation is still grinding. It's still there. And then you have the college football playoffs, the negotiations. Mike Oresco, we could have a whole program on that, but we're not going to. Maybe later today we have another live show, because we're going to get more information coming out of Chicago. In regards to Mike Oresco, he's still kind of, look, we like 6+6, but we'll go to 5+7 as long as our future access, we get future access to the college football playoffs. Let's get to the article. Let's get to the Post and Courier article today out of South Carolina. I know most of you haven't read it, so we got to go through it, because a lot of you are saying, what are you even talking about, Greg? I just want to go through real fast. Thanks, Go Ducky, Obsidian, T-Duck, K2, Laura Weiss, J Go Blue, Michael Uten, Struthers, Matt Schnuck, J-Rod, Rick SCC, Steve, Mr. Bearcats in the house, Carson, Hagen, Ted Evans, Richard L. The Buffalo is in the house, Tater Tots, Big Time News, Gerard Jones, thanks for coming on in, John Menser, Curtis Brown, Gold Nose, FSU, Florida State fan base must be smiling from ear to ear as they go through this article coming out of South Carolina. I'm not going to be able to get to all of you, but Jonathan Price, thanks for coming on in. Stephen McNeely, thanks for coming on in. Immaculate, Mr. Buckeye is all buckled up. Kenneth Evans is in the house. David Griffin is in the house. Alan Tran is in the house. John Teal, thank you for those super chats. You are in the house. James Foster, Gold Devils. Wow, a lot of people are in the house. Let's get to the story. Sorry I can't get to everybody. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, I know a lot of you haven't read this or even seen it. Obsidian says, no Sankey or Yarmark in the theater. A lot of changes. Sankey probably will be in the house soon. Let's just put it that way. This is going to be an ever-evolving story, and it's going to last for quite a while. Let's get to the story. Again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. If you want your comment to be posted, we talk about it. Give us a donation. Help us keep the lights on here. Peek around the corner. Hit that $sign. Buckle up. Let's get into it. Sapakoff from the Post and Courier. Clemson's ACC departure may be sooner as the Gamecocks fret. Clemson. The Clemson football program is 3-5 in its last 8 games against Power 5 conference foes or Notre Dame. That includes presently the 0-2 in the ACC for the first time since 2010, and unranked with 4 other ACC teams being ranked. Could be worse. The Tigers are a few plays away from 3-7 in the last 10 games against major college teams. Wins of 34-28 at Florida State and 27-21 over Syracuse last season. It's nothing a few key transfer portal additions and a couple of coaching staff changes won't fix before Clemson muscles up for what should be a great 2024 season opener against the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta. But Clemson fans likely won't have to wait that long to soothe the sting of a relatively disappointing season with big picture perspective. Here is one of the many PATC money shots in this article. Schools administrators indicate in an announcement about a Clemson bolt from its growing financial disadvantage in the ACC relative to SEC and Big Ten schools is coming soon. School administrators, meaning more than one, have told Gene Sapakoff at the Post and Courier that a Clemson bolt from the ACC is coming soon. Probably along with Florida State and North Carolina and perhaps another ACC school or more. Even as the University of South Carolina officials try to block Clemson from the SEC. So according to the Post and Courier, South Carolina is trying to do what Texas A&M couldn't do because Texas A&M did not see Texas and Oklahoma coming into the conference. How soon? How soon will Clemson bolt, make their announcement, try to reach a settlement? Sooner than later. A Clemson senior administrator said last week when asked about a timetable. Sooner than later. That's why we have that in the title of our live show this afternoon. Sooner than later. A Clemson senior administrator said last week when asked about a timetable. Sometime in 2023. Stay very tuned, the administrator said. It's possible this is about pressuring the ACC into more instead of base action. Now, here at Peek Around the Corner, we don't think that's what this is all about. Those days are over. They got what they could out of the unequal revenue sharing, which wasn't going to solve the issue anyways. The days of public announcements or internal discussions just to pressure the ACC. There's only so much that Jim Phillips and the ACC can do with their current Tier 1, Tier 2 media contracts. There's only so much juice you can get out of the dried melon. So we don't believe at PATC that any more Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina public or private discussions of the ACC has anything to do with brinkmanship, with pressure. Those days are over. That has been played out. Back to the article. But it's certain Clemson officials believe that the ACC grant of rights agreement that theoretically ties member schools to the conference through 2036 can be negotiated. And what I think that means is negotiated successfully for all parties. In other words, don't go to the courts. Negotiate this settlement. Or as another Clemson official said, there is strength in numbers if we're not the only departing ACC school doing the negotiating. And of course, that's a big hint, right? Strength in numbers, the bum rush, going to the ACC all together or one soon after the other in trying to get a settlement with the ACC schools and the ACC schools that won't have a landing spot in the SEC, the ACC, or the Big 12. While most Clemson administrators and fans prefer a move to the SEC, the Big Ten is a possibility. The process, perhaps unfolding, might go like this. Again, this is from the Post and Courier, Gene Sapakoff. His sources, and it sounds like, if you read the article, it's more than one source. It's multiple Clemson administrators. The Big Ten gets serious about, this is the possible scenarios. The Big Ten gets serious about adding a southern tier led by North Carolina, the top non-Notre Dame prize for both the Big Ten and the SEC. And also including Clemson and Florida State and perhaps Georgia Tech and or Miami. The other scenario, the SEC counters wanting North Carolina primarily and seeking to block such a major Big Ten or Big 12 move into its footprint. While SEC officials this week again declined to talk about specific schools, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, and this is why I think Greg Sankey is going to be strolling in to the PATC Holy Smokes Theater. What we're about to go through right here is why I think Greg Sankey is going to be strolling into the theater pretty soon. While SEC officials this week again declined to talk about specific schools, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey was to the point in his annual SEC Media Days address while in Atlanta in July of 2022. Sankey said the SEC is happy with its move to 16 members with additions of Oklahoma and Texas. But we'll watch what happens around us, Sankey said, and be thoughtful, but be nimble. Be ready to act. Be nimble. Very thoughtful and nimble, you can bet, probably including teams of analysts working in a secret basement, cloak and dagger style, cloak and dagger at SEC headquarters or offsite in Muscle Shoals. Meanwhile, at South Carolina, there is a mix of joy and angst. And then it goes on to talk about Beamer's recruiting edge, South Carolina, SEC. We're not going to go through that. You can read that part of the article. Go to the link in the description box. Beamer then goes on to say, every time I look on the phone, there's a school in another conference that's begging to get out of the conference that they're in and into the SEC, Beamer said. They're leaving. They're just trying to figure out how and when. And I think Beamer's really talking about the in-state rival Clemson. They're leaving. It's just how and when. And the how looks like it's a bum rush. Strength in numbers. Multiple ACC schools looking to negotiate to get out of the conference all at once. We're going to skip this part of the article. Again, it talks about Gamecock Nation settlement, comparing it to Texas A&M. The Big Ten remains an option. The Clemson administrator said the Big Ten remains an option. One of the sources, speaking to Gene Sapakoff at the Post and Courier, one of those sources saying, yes, Big Ten remains an option. So this is not a lockdown deal between the SEC and Clemson, the SEC and Florida State, SEC and North Carolina. Scheduling would be alleviated by other ACC schools joining in a renewed rivalry with Maryland. The Association of American University Academic Status, as reported by Brett McMurphy, is not needed. It's not something that has to absolutely be achieved by a school to become a Big Ten expansion candidate. We've gone over that many, many times before. A memorable 2023 season, one way or another, one conference or another, change is likely as the Saturday morning drive-through line at any Chick-fil-A near a football stadium. The ACC in May announced a success incentive initiative. It doesn't come close to alleviating the concerns of Clemson and Florida State. The Big Ten gave out $58.8 million, SEC $49.9 million, ACC distributed between $38 and $41 million, but the gap is going to grow. We've gone through that. Clemson and Florida State and North Carolina were the no votes on September 1st in a 12-3 ACC decision to add Stanford, California, and SMU. The North Carolina's Board of Trustees took the hardest stance against it, as seen in a pre-vote statement issued by its trustees. And we have gone through that as well. So finally, at the end of the article, something is brewing that might make the 2023 season more memorable, just in time for a 12-team playoff in 2024. Again, by Gene Sapakoff, the Post and Courier. Wow. Wow. Coming soon. Stay very tuned. Coming sooner rather than later. And it sounds like from every indications, the Clemson, the sources that have told the Post and Courier that it's going to be strength in numbers. They're going to gather. Who's going to be in that number? Who is going to be in that group of schools? Well, I think it's fair to say that it's going to be either the entire Magnificent Seven or a subgroup of the Magnificent Seven, and the schools that are about to bum rush the ACC and trying to get a settlement to get out of the gore are schools that have been given the wink wink and a nod nod, saying if you're successful in this process, that you will have a landing spot in the Big Ten, the SEC, if you can get through this process, a settlement. So who's going to be in? Who are the schools that are going to be with Clemson and Florida State and North Carolina? According to the sources, there's going to be at least one more school and perhaps others. We'll get to your comments. We're going to get your comments right now into your phone calls. We're going to light up the phone line right now. Immaculate said Magnificent Seven +1. Again, and as we've talked about yesterday and over the months, none of this movement, the end result of this movement doesn't seem to be ACC schools, the Magnificent Seven, coming together and forming a new conference. It's about getting to SEC in the Big Ten. You saw what the Clemson administrators, the sources have told Gene Sapakoff at the Post and Courier. And we've been seeing those reports over and over and over again. This is about more consolidation. And the story could quickly change to, not change, but expand to, what are these ACC schools going to do that do not have a landing spot in the SEC in the Big Ten? Might not have a landing spot in the Big 12 if the Big 12 is able to eat. What is their best pathway? Do they collect the bags of cash, keep the ACC network, stay as a conference, stay as an autonomy for conference? Is that the way they should do it just now? Or do they continue year after year after year, stopping this implosion, going to the courts, but then risking their future beyond the early 2030s? Okay, let's get to your comments. Again, if you want to make sure I get to your comment, hit that $sign. There's so many. That's the only way you can be assured that your comment's going to be read and talked about. I'm going to open up the phone lines right now. There is no reason to stall this out any longer. 763-260-1333. That's the number. The number is also on the ticker on the bottom of the screen. Big news out of South Carolina. Hello.
Ryan Martin.
Ryan Martin, the floor is yours.
Hey, Greg. How's it going? Long time no talk.
Yes. How's it going with you, sir?
Oh, it's a beautiful... Wednesday? I don't even know what day it is anymore. I'm hoping the government doesn't shut down this weekend.
Yeah. Yes.
Otherwise, I'm going to be out of work for a few days. It's crazy how quickly this is moving. I thought I was under the impression when the ACC went ahead and added Stanford and Cal and SMU that things were going to stabilize into a Power Four. That none of this was actually going to end up happening, aside from a couple of
let me interrupt you real quick.
Good.
Couple things, and I apologize, and I'm going to be interrupting the callers today, and I apologize for that. Just bear with me.
You're fine.
Number one, when that happened, couple weeks before it happened, we had Peek Around the Corner. We made it pretty clear that the additions of California, Stanford, and SMU wasn't going to have any effect on negatively or positively the exit ramps for Florida State, North Carolina. It's just that wasn't part of the equation. There wasn't going to be a dissolution vote. None of that was in play. Number one. Number two, I just got a message. There is no official pushback on the story yet. Now, I might get one before this show's over, but I just got another message saying people are working on it. But nobody, now this has been out for 6.5 hours. And normally, look, I just don't run with any story that's printed in paper, okay? I don't. I think you guys know me. In fact, most of the time I shoot things down. I have not been able to shoot this down yet. And I'm working on it. And that's how you do it. You don't buy into, you poke and prod on the other side. And I have yet to be able to shoot this down. Thanks again. Go ahead, Ryan. What do you got to say, sir?
Well, and to kind of key into your first point is like I figured FSU and Clemson were gone. But enough of the ACC was convinced with those other three additions that they could survive any sort of major runoff. Kind of like what kind of the opposite of what the Big 12 was trying to do a few years ago, before Texas and OU shut everything down on an expansion back in 2016. Well, and the network too, but that's a different conversation. No, I thought realistically when everything was all wrapped up with that we were going to kind of stabilize into a big brother, little brother situation in the Power Four where, SEC, Big Ten were obviously going to be top dogs, ACC, Big 12 kind of pairing off somehow in there between the two of them. But it's really interesting to see that it just hasn't really stopped that dynamic of we're still looking to get out of here.
Yeah.
And more now, I'm convinced now that everything's just going to kind of fall apart before any of that movement for Stanford, Cal, and SMU can happen. Now, I think the bigger question that people are going to be asking is, well, what happens with everybody else? How does Oregon State, Washington State, and now Stanford and Cal kind of parlay that into, their best position going forward from that? I'd be really interested to see what kind of blowback effect that has on
this,
so to speak.
And this, of course, Oregon State, Washington State, what are they going to do? Well, if this is a sooner rather than later type of move by Clemson, an announcement, Oregon State and Washington State would be one of the major candidates for further western coastal expansion by the ACC, right?
Yeah.
Because you got Stanford and California. You might want to add 2 more. They're going to be looking to backfill. Besides the obvious Tulane and South Florida, Memphis type of candidates, you've got Oregon State, Washington State out there that can be, can make a four-team or bigger pod out in the West Coast. So that's also going to come back into play.
But I don't even really know if they are. I mean, you kind of have to think about it. Stanford and Cal had other considerations for the ACC, right? I mean, two big academic powerhouses, a name that you want to be associated with in Stanford. I mean, not to mention the fact that you're claiming what is wholly a third of, the Conference of Champions, championships, or I guess a little bit more than a third. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
As far as Stanford makes sense. Stanford wasn't going to go anywhere without Cal, I think, at that point. And SMU is they're more of a, they can buy their way in, and we make more money off of them on the upfront anyway. I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see the ripple effect because you kind of have a viable leftovers conference at the end of it all. If you take some of the best from the American, some of the best from the Mountain West, and kind of bridge the gap, so to speak. But I honestly don't know if anybody less in the pack ends up in another, especially if Stanford and Cal get left out of the ACC in this instance. I don't know if there's a place for them in the Big 12, Big 10, or SEC. And that's, I know I'm being a little long-winded, so I'm going to hop off and let somebody else hop on. So
appreciate it. Great call.
Have a good one, sir.
Yep, thank you, sir. Another aspect to this is the expanded playoff in the distribution money, the money that's going to be distributed. It's going to be massive.
Call from
JD.
JD, I'm so glad you called. Thank you, sir. Can you just hold on 1 second?
Absolutely.
I apologize. I just want to throw this in the mix. The playoff distribution money is also something that's pushing consolidation. SMU, SMU, yes, they're not going to take any media money, ACC distributed media money for Tier 1, Tier 2 for the next 9 to 10 years, but they're still coming out ahead. The reason they're going to still come out ahead in revenue is because they're going to get the power autonomy for distribution percentage that each school is going to get relative to the G5 schools. And the gap is huge. And so SMU is going to, they were only making $7 million a year in AAC media money, conference payout money. They're going to make more. So what I'm saying is there is another built-in incentive for Boston College, a Wake Forest, and possibly a few other ACC schools to sit down and negotiate with the Florida State, with the North Carolina, because if they can keep their autonomy force status, not only will they get bags of cash from the Seminoles, the Tar Heels, the Virginia Cavaliers possibly, whoever else gets a landing spot in the SEC and the Big Ten, not only do they get the bags of cash, but they could keep their autonomy force status, ACC backfields, like they just started with California Stanford, and they come out ahead both ways. You see, Washington State and Oregon State, as of now, and of course that could change. They could be backfilled for ACC. Right now, they're looking at having G5 playoff distribution money. So that's another thing that's driving all this. The great gold rush of 2026 is driving so much of this. All right, man. Mr. Seminole is on the line. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. You've been saying, Greg, Clemson is right there with Florida State. I've been pushing you saying, nope, nope, nope. It looks like I'm taking the big fat L. Mr. Seminole, the floor is yours as long as you want it and need it. Go ahead, sir.
I appreciate it, sir. And I was just calling in to offer a little more information that I started to discuss the other day, and I kind of held back. But, yes, we started hearing a little more about Clemson being in the picture before the August 15th date. I had gotten some messages, and also I talked to some other people that suggested that FSU and Clemson were tied at the hip, especially from Clemson's perspective, not necessarily FSU's perspective. Again, I don't know. I'm not in those inner circles, you know. But there was a lot of confidence that they were going to go at this together. Well, if you remember our conversation. It wasn't yesterday, it was the day before yesterday, when I talked about some of the things coming out of the Clemson insiders.
Yes, sir.
One of the FSU insider that I said had really serious Big Ten ties, you know, I referred to him.
Mm-hmm.
When he was referring to Clemson insiders that he was talking with and hanging out with before the game on Saturday, those were Clemson Board of Trustee members, supposedly.
Okay.
So he was so kind of taken aback. They were just so out in the open talking about, no, FSU and Clemson are tied at the hip and we're about to make a move soon. And, you know, this gentleman, he talks about the connections with the Big Ten. You know, and he goes into a lot of other things. And he's also very quiet at times. But then he'll step in after a month and he'll offer some things. So that's what kind of raised my just kind of got my attention, because that was as out in the front statement as he's ever made. And then I'm starting to hear the conversations about North Carolina's being more aggressive. And then, you know, FSU's been aggressive this whole time. Another thing we kind of came to the forefront in the last couple of days on the message boards, the information you're getting from your FSU money perch, it's spot on. I mean, it's spot on. The thing is FSU, yes, is waiting to see what Notre Dame does. Because like you said, you know, they're going to create a path where basically either the GOR will get voided if Notre Dame leaves. A new GOR will need to be created for the ACC. At that point, again, that problem's out of the way. You still have your exit fees. So there's been some holdback from FSU to see what Notre Dame's going to do with their new media deal. They end up leaving their cooperation or their agreement with the ACC, you know, it's a jailbreak. There's no GOR. If they get a new deal and they keep their agreement with the ACC, yes, FSU and others are going to challenge. They're just going to leave the ACC and, hey, say sue us. You know, there's some media articles today or some people online referring that Clemson now has hired some law firms to handle this. Apparently FSU's already got some New York City law firms just sitting waiting. I mean, they're just waiting whenever the time's ready. So there's just a lot of things going on, but you know, the information you're getting, I mean, is spot on. There's other things that we're getting on our side, but you know, I don't know how accurate it is, but nothing has been proven untrue. Up to this point, it's all been really, really accurate.
Now, let me ask your opinion on this. In that article from the Post and Courier and other people have been talking about the potentiality of Clemson being blocked by South Carolina and Florida potentially blocking Florida State. I'm just going to give you my strongly held opinion. I think Greg Sankey and the SEC are going to act in the best interest of the SEC. If Florida State, getting Tallahassee, that whole area and that market, and there's a million, you know, Florida State, a massive brand, and if South Carolina, for whatever reason, the SEC, Greg Sankey doesn't want the Big Ten to grab Clemson, that's more of a defensive tactic. Whatever it is, I think Greg Sankey and the SEC schools are going to act in the best interest of the SEC, and I don't think they're going to allow this blockage, just like they didn't allow Texas to get blocked. They didn't allow Texas A&M to cast that veto. That's my opinion. What is your opinion on it? Do you think Florida and a South Carolina could muster up support in the SEC to block a Florida State and Clemson addition to the SEC?
It's been said by insiders that, yes, years ago, Georgia and Florida were blocking Florida State going to the SEC. Florida's, from what I understand, is no longer blocking FSU because they don't want the rivalry to go away. And there's other aspects. Are they really thrilled about Florida State going into the SEC? No, because when you look at the last 30 years, even though they have the same number of national championships, FSU's outperformed Florida with less revenue.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, you know, would they absolutely get blocked? No. I don't think Georgia would be too thrilled about it, but, you know, because Florida State's right there between the two. And FSU is really making Kirby angry because he's losing a lot of recruiting battles to FSU right now.
Yeah.
So he's just not really thrilled about it.
Yeah.
But South Carolina, now, I don't know, and that's a whole other animal, and I could see where they don't want Clemson coming into the SEC because that is the only advantage they have.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you this, the gentleman that said he was talking with the BOT members from Clemson, he did say nowhere in those discussions were the SEC ever mentioned.
What was that again?
When the guy that I told you, the FSU insider that has ties to the Big Ten, okay?
Yeah.
When he was at the pregame gatherings and there were Clemson Board of Trustee members there and they were just talking out in the open about Clemson's about to make a move.
Yeah.
We know now that they were 100% telling the truth. We found this out a couple of days later.
Yeah.
He said in these conversations there were talks about FSU and Clemson and other ACC schools preparing to leave. Okay?
Yeah.
And the SEC was never mentioned in the conversation.
Yeah. Interesting. You know what you know, you guys know how much I believe, in the reporting of Brett McMurphy, right?
Yes.
And when he mentioned quite a while, months and months and months ago, he put out a tweet about Oregon, Washington, being targets of the Big Ten. We knew that here at Peek Around the Corner, but he mentioned Florida State, right? And he's been mentioning Florida State for a long time. But in the last time he listed the teams, he added one new school to the target list of the Big Ten. Potential target. We're not talking that's a deal done. We're just saying these are schools that the Big Ten would be interested in, right? His one addition to the Florida State, Miami of Florida, Oregon, Washington list was Clemson. He go ahead, people might not believe me, but do a search on it. Brett McMurphy, Clemson, Big Ten. He added Clemson to that list. And watching how he works now, he doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, but watching how he does things, he added Clemson for a reason. He just didn't add Clemson to say, hey, he's a serious guy who gets all this stuff right, and he's very. So he added Clemson for a reason, which means somebody told him that Big Ten would be interested, along with Florida State, Miami, Florida, North Carolina, Virginia. Clemson got into that list. So it's all real interesting, sir, and I don't know. This sucker could go so many different ways. It's unbelievable.
I think the networks, as far as the additions from what we've seen, Gene Williams on War Chant really connected when all this stuff was going on.
Yeah.
Before the August 15th, his connections were saying that FSU and Clemson were highly desired by Fox. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the numbers. Besides Colorado and the whole Dion thing, and besides the Ohio State Notre Dame game, FSU and Clemson over the weekend for a noon game got almost 7 million viewers, 6.9 million viewers.
Yeah.
Okay. FSU Boston College got 3.5 million.
Yes. Yep.
FSU and LSU was at peak. It was like 9.1 or 9. But peak was like 10.3 or 10.5. In other words, FSU is a brand. Clemson is a brand. Now, Clemson would have higher numbers up to this point, but they haven't played as big in names early in the season. They played Duke, but so they'll be playing against Notre Dame. They'll be playing against some other teams. So they'll have huge numbers. That's what the networks want. Now, it's just my personal opinion. I heard Moen talk about North Carolina coming up. I think they're in the mix, and I think that's what some of the Big Ten presidents would want. I think that's why that name's coming up a little more, because some of the academians would rather have a North Carolina over an FSU or Clemson. But I think they're all in the mix. I think North Carolina's definitely probably more in the mix for the SEC than FSU and Clemson, just for what we talked about the other day, was footprint. You're expanding your southern footprint. So they've all got their strategic goals. I mean, and that's fair. I don't have to be a fanboy to say, hey, I understand why one person would want one more than the other. Yeah. But I do believe that a lot of the smoke that's been coming lately, hardly any of it's been proven untrue. We get more evidence that it is true. And I also am starting to believe, like we talked the other day, that some of this is a foregone conclusion. It's already been agreed to, and it's already happened. I don't know that for certain. Yeah. I don't know if the ACC's already agreed to the exit, or they just knew the exit was coming and they were backfilling in preparation. That I don't know.
Yeah.
Because people are talking about willing to sue, I think it's the other version, the other part. I couldn't remember which one I said first, the former or the latter. I don't think necessarily the ACC's already agreed to it, but they may not be willing to fight tooth and nail to stop it either.
Yeah.
I think the money's the only thing that's going to become a factor. How much. And if we get back into the composition clause, I know some people were saying, well, you just got to stay at 15, and that's it. I don't know. I still believe, we don't know all the verbiage and all the terminology that's in the composition clause because we don't get to see the ACC contract. But you can't tell me that if FSU, Clemson, North Carolina, and others leave, that there isn't a mechanism in there for ESPN to renegotiate. And any change like that voids the GOR. So, anyway, I know I've been long-winded.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm so happy you called. I hope you keep calling us because this story is going to be with us for quite a long time. It's going to be dramatic. It's going to be earth-shaking. Whatever happens, it's going to be earth-shaking. So,
and there's always a reaction. Clemson apparently is getting ready to formally. There might be things that happen that cause them to delay.
Yeah.
So, people will say, well, FSU was talking about, August 15th and they didn't move. Well, I'm not so sure they were planning on announcing it August 15th. I think they were just shaking the trees and just rattling the bushes a little bit because they're more or less, preparing the stage as you referred to.
Yeah.
And they had to get these negotiations moving forward. There's just a lot going on, and there's just a lot you've heard, but everything is starting to narrow down, and now the national media is kind of picking up on it. You picked up on it earlier than they did. These conversations inside FSU, message boards and then insider circles have been going on since, I think 2018, 2019, talking about it's coming, and now it's time.
All righty, sir.
But anyway, like I said, sorry to be so long-winded.
No problem. I appreciate the phone call. Please call tomorrow, every single day. Okay, sir?
All right, sir.
Thank you, man.
Thanks
Mr. Seminole. John D., all right. Chris Kenny, thank you for the super chat. I think you're right. Oregon State, Washington State going to ACC eliminates any argument that a zombie beat P12 is an autonomy conference. Bolsters ACC odds remain one. Thank you for the super chat, Chris Kenny. Thank you for your generosity channel. The biggest problem with that is timing. I mean, Oregon State and Washington State, you'd think they would need to move. Of course, they have a 2-year grace period under the NCAA. But thank you for the super chat, Chris Kenny.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate, can you hold on 1 second, sir?
Sure thing.
Thank you so much for calling. 1 second. I got another Stephen McNeely. Thank you for your super chat. Greg, do you think the SEC and the Big Ten would collaborate on who goes where? Or is it every conference for itself? I think it's every conference for itself. But, great question. I don't have I'm not 100% sure. I think it's every conference for itself. I don't think they can, or they want to, or their networks would want to collude like that. But we'll see what Immaculate said. Thank you so much for the super chat, Stephen McNeely. I appreciate it, good sir. The floor is yours, Mr. Hawkeye. Holy smokes. Post and Courier. People are scrambling. People are still scrambling. As we're doing this live show, I've gotten a few messages. No one is shooting this down yet. People are trying to figure out how much of this is legit, but nobody has shot the essence, the core of the article down yet, and it's been, holy smoke, 7 hours since this article has come out. Go ahead, Immaculate.
I'm starting to think this may have been the purpose for the meetings because we have media now out here saying that the commissioners' meetings that are going on, they're already done. They're already done for the day, and then they didn't even talk about the 6+6 or the 5+7. They didn't even get to it. It's only 1 o'clock in Chicago, and they're already done.
Wow.
That doesn't mean all talks are done there, but the commissioners are the managers, so to speak. So if they're already kind of not going to be talking anymore, then they're not expecting the vote to come from the board up top. So I'm starting to think they already knew this wasn't happening, and this was just to bring everyone together at the big headquarters to have these talks. You know, whoever's there from Clemson, whoever's there from North Carolina, whoever's there from Florida State, they can directly talk to folks from the Big Ten without having to go, a roundabout ways in order to do that. And I don't know, I just found it strange that all of these different media guys are already coming out saying that the commissioners are done for the vote. Like, it's way too early. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, well, as Tony said in the chat room, it's cocktail hour in Chicago. They're all probably talking at the local bars. I don't know. I mean, quite honestly, there isn't much more to discuss in regards to the college football playoffs until we get resolution with Oregon State and Washington State and everything. Yep. The comments from Mike Oresco are interesting. It looks like he's willing to deal, ready to go to 5+7 if they get some longer term commitment, which we've talked about here. And I'm not sure how much there's left to talk about, but again, they're all going to take this opportunity to talk. And this, if you read that article in the Post and Courier, it sounded like, now I don't want to, I'm going to say allegedly here, okay? Allegedly. It sounded like the Post and Courier had this information last week. Because if you go through the article, I'm not going to go through it right now, but if you go through it, some of this information, at least some of it came to Post and Courier last week. They decide to drop it today. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's I look for kind of coincidences in terms of the timing of things. Yeah. For them to drop it on this day with what's going on, it's certainly interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I tend to think it does. I mean, like you're saying, especially if this was done a week ago and they had this, they held on to it for release on this day, and there would be a purpose for that.
Now, there's one thing I want to, I know you probably have a lot to talk about, but can I, and of course the floor is yours, but can I steer you into this talk about Notre Dame just quickly?
Sure.
Look, yes, I'm biased because, of the information we've received about Notre Dame, and we had them going into the Holy Smokes Theater yesterday for the very first time, and the whole NBC thing. I think NBC is seeing more consolidation. I don't think they're interested in having Notre Dame fold into the Big Ten. Look, I know a lot of really smart people have talked about Notre Dame staying with the ACC, and this is why they wanted Stanford and California in their conference. And I really have a hard time believing that that's even a possibility, because Notre Dame, they're going to want to be competing at the highest level. And right now, it's a little bit of a struggle for them, right? Even with the deal, even though they have a lot of advantages doing what they're doing with the ACC, they're still behind the 8 ball, so to speak. And here they are negotiating, trying to get a good deal with NBC. But if the ACC is this unstable, if there's a possible implosion, even the threat of that, the 5-game schedule that Notre Dame has with the ACC is about to blow up, right? There's not going to be a Notre Dame Clemson, Notre Dame, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Florida State game, conference game on NBC, home game for Notre Dame. The value of Notre Dame's future here in the next so many years with NBC, with that schedule arrangement with ACC, the value goes even down more with all this instability. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
I don't buy into Notre Dame. I can buy into Notre Dame somehow, some way, sticking with independence through it all, no matter what, over them joining the ACC or sticking with this deal with ACC if the ACC is about to become even less of itself with this possible implosion. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
I do.
Okay.
And I would agree with you that if it's purely about the money, Notre Dame's going to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Purely about big name matchups that are going to get huge, massive ratings on TV, it's about the Big Ten. That's where they're going. Especially this Florida State and Clemson, North Carolina, if they come in as well, there's just no other choice at that point. My only way that I see them possibly staying ACC, and mind you, some people think...
Hey, Immaculate, we're having trouble with your phone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I might have had my hand over the mic.
Got it.
The only reason why I personally have a blue check mark on Twitter is because it allows me to have much more in terms of conversations behind, private conversations. I've had a pretty good private conversation with someone from Notre Dame who's well known on there in terms of being in that realm, and so I've had an extensive conversation on this. And from that, my opinion on what might keep them in have them decide on the ACC over the Big Ten it comes down to it not being purely about money, but being more of the somewhere that they could be that's theirs. That they've got kind of this mentality towards independence and being pushed in the direction that they don't want to be in. That if they could create kind of their perfect conference, I could see the likes of maybe a Miami staying with them. I could see the likes of a Pitt probably staying with them. You got Stanford, Duke. One of the things I've been talking about for a while is do not sleep on what's going on with the Ivies. They are now have attacks on them from multiple directions in terms of their scholarship studies. So it would have to be some type of situation where they decide to go all in with the ACC and add enough value to it so that they keep a decent deal. Would it be equal to what the Big Ten has? No. Another idea that I kind of throw on that it's crazy right now, but things have happened that were crazy before they happened, is if you see some type of counter movement between conferences, like to say maybe a USC was that upset about Oregon joining the Big Ten with them in the same year, would they and Northwestern be willing to go to the ACC in return for like a Florida State and a California? I'm not saying that's happening, but that's equal value. California, Northwestern, Florida State, USC then with Notre Dame as an in-conference rivalry. Something crazy, strange like that. I just throw out there not because this is happening, but
no, I understand.
Something that's out of the ballpark right now. Could that happen? Then you could see like a Vanderbilt move over there in return for UNC or Clemson. Just a gathering of elite private universities. And if that's the case, that might be where Notre Dame got their AAU votes from. And if that's the case, then that's also where Miami got their votes from. And I've always been watching that saying, there's some political connection there, whether it's the Big Ten or it's from somewhere else. I don't know. But that's about it. But otherwise, no, I'm with you. And I think the straight up obvious value is for them to go to the Big Ten. So we'll see.
Yeah, to me, it's, we've been saying this since we opened up this YouTube channel. The walls are closing in on Notre Dame. Incredible brand, but sticking with independence in this era of consolidation, this massive consolidation, man, it is a tough road. Because if the Big Ten expands, they're going to go to 10 conference games. There's less games out there for Notre Dame to satisfy a media company with their home schedule. It's just, it becomes incredibly difficult. And of course, what we've heard between Notre Dame and NBC, it's lukewarm at best right now for Notre Dame to stay independent with NBC. Yeah. So I don't know. I think everything is sort of cascading upon itself. Everything is kind of just, the pressure of consolidation is still there. And every time it's been there, right, it's happened. Yeah. Oklahoma and Texas. We talked about it on our Twitter at Flag Empire. When we saw that massive deal happening with SEC and ESPN, we said Oregon and Texas have their eyes on the SEC. When the whole USC thing was the same thing. It just keeps going, and the pressure is there for the schools that have this want and the ability, because they have great recruiting grounds around them, they have great support, whatever reasons. The schools that have this ability, this want, this will to compete at the highest level of college football, especially, they're gonna do all they can to jump into the SEC and the Big Ten. We saw it with Washington and Oregon taking a big cut discount, and I think and teams are willing. These universities are willing to risk to try to settle, to go against the grant of rights. We're seeing it all happening, and it's happening sooner than we thought. We thought it was going to be the first quarter of 2024. That's what we were told. But man, if it happens during this football season, we're going to have to take the big fat L, because it's happening sooner than what we thought. I have not gotten a pushback on this article yet, Immaculate. Not one pushback yet. And that speaks a lot to me, because I've been fortunate to have the ability to get a pushback on many, many articles that are out there, right?
Yeah.
Where people ask me and I say, nah, dissolution, nah. This one that we've talked about today, no pushback yet, and it's 2:17 Eastern time.
Well, they didn't keep their public-facing vote no for no reason. Mm-hmm. That is way beyond the norm, to the point where it makes me wonder if there's actually a legal reason for that, if that can be used within a legal argument. I don't know, but it's just very unusual. In terms of NBC and Notre Dame, I've been shooting that one for a while. I do not see any logic in NBC maintaining that. And people are like, oh, but the connection, the emotional. This is a corporation. They don't care. I don't care if, even if the person in charge of it is a Notre Dame alum, he still has to show good fiscal sense with his choice. And I'm sorry, but Notre Dame's ratings are not better than the ratings you're seeing with the top programs in the Big Ten. And when you have USC coming in, Washington coming in, Oregon coming in, if this Florida State thing works out, Clemson, Notre Dame's ratings are not that great that you're willing to pay that much for them, because you're basically looking at $70 million for one school. That's what the payout is to every single Big Ten school, but that's being split between 3 networks. So, if Notre Dame joins the Big Ten, NBC can still get access to that content, but at a third of the price.
Yeah.
And if they don't have all the Notre Dame games, so what? The ratings aren't actually better than all these other possibilities that they're going to get in the Big Ten. So yeah. I just, I understand that people that are connected, that have the emotional response of, oh, he's the Notre Dame alumni who's over there and he's coming over to BAD. Well, if he's coming over to BAD, it's probably because his position with NBC, and as far as that, is no longer really helpful to Notre Dame in the future.
Yep.
So,
Let me. I apologize, Immaculate. Let me interrupt just a second here. I know I've gotten a few chats and a few things on my text. Love Sports. A person in the chat arrived late. What's the name of the article Greg is referring to? There's a lot of new people in the chat right now. Go to the. Well, don't go to it now. But after we're done, stay with us here at Peek Around the Corner. But I provided a link in the description box. It's under subscription. We put it out there on our show, so you can go back earlier in our show, go through it. I do have up on the screen one of the important things I want to read over again. But again, to answer the question in the chat room, it's Post and Courier in South Carolina from Gene Sapakoff. It's about Clemson looking at leaving the ACC or an announcement to leave sooner rather than later. And I just want to read this paragraph here, one part of the article, while I have you on the phone, Immaculate, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
It says school administrators, plural. You see, they've got more than one source when they ran with this story today.
Yeah.
School administrators indicate an announcement about a Clemson bolt from its growing financial disadvantage in the ACC relative to SEC. Basically, it's school administrators indicate an announcement about a Clemson bolt from the ACC is coming soon, probably along with Florida State and North Carolina, and perhaps another ACC school or more. So that means that people of Clemson, now play along here, more than one sources at Clemson, administrators. In fact, one in this article was listed as a senior administrator, which, I'm not going to go into who I think or what I think about that, but multiple sources are saying probably along with Florida State and North Carolina. In other words, the announcement will happen together or soon after each other. Strength in numbers type of announcement to try to get a settlement from the ACC. And it says, and perhaps another ACC school or more. And I don't think that would be put into the article. That's associated with the school administrators of Clemson is telling the Post and Courier. So they're definitely, from Clemson's perspective, there's a fourth school that could be coming along with an announcement along with Florida State and North Carolina. And there could be even more. Immaculate, my question to you is, let's say there is a fourth ACC school that is ready to go and announce along with North Carolina, Florida State, and Clemson, or soon after. Who do you believe that fourth ACC school is ready to announce along with Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I just want to get your opinion on it.
I've definitely got an opinion on that. I don't think North Carolina State turning its vote means that they aren't ready to go. I think someone had to turn that vote if an agreement was made. And I think with Florida State, Clemson, and UNC being the vanguard, they needed to keep their votes publicly as no. So North Carolina State had to do that. So they're an obvious pick. The other one that I would point to, if the SEC fights for UNC, and that's their number one, the number two I'd say for the SEC would actually be Virginia. And every single move that we've seen the SEC make, they've touted how much it's improved the academic standing of their conference. They brought in Texas, that's a public Ivy. They get North Carolina, that's a public Ivy. If they get Virginia, that's a public Ivy. The standing of their conference, whether people, care about that or believe that or not, the people in that running that conference care about it. And that would be a big win for them in that regard. So I'm thinking UNC, Virginia, SEC. This Florida State Clemson thing to the Big Ten does make sense. And if you're the SEC, you say, yeah, that's maybe dangerous to us, but we're the SEC and this is the Southeast. We need to get into North Carolina and Virginia, and we'd rather do that with North Carolina and Virginia rather than North Carolina State and Virginia Tech.
Now, John Teal just came with a super chat, and he said, thank you, John, once again, for your generosity. 4th team is Miami, in his opinion.
The Big Ten or the SEC?
No, just a team that would go with the announcement along with the North Carolina, a Florida State, and a Clemson.
Yeah, I think Miami, as weird as this may sound, is tied to Notre Dame wherever they go. If Notre Dame chooses the ACC, I think Miami might stay there as well. If Notre Dame's going to the Big Ten, I think Miami's going to want to get involved with that too.
Yeah.
And I think that Miami is a much better grab for the Big Ten than it is for the SEC.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because, currently they don't really have a great stadium situation, and they're the guy that was going to pay for that in trouble.
Yeah.
The Big Ten could help get that funding though. So I think that would be good for them. But yeah, I definitely think Miami. I was saying a while back when the Magnificent Seven talk came out that Miami was the likely source of that leak. I had my reasons for that, but I kind of felt like they had the most to gain out of that group to kind of put that out. That may not be the case now looking at this. It could have been any of those, UNC or Florida State or Clemson. But in terms of what Tony says, Miami, the value, it's southern Florida. As they say, the farther south in Florida you go, the more north you are.
Yes.
There's a lot of Big Ten folks down there. And,
yes.
They could probably fill that stadium better than Miami fans could, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, this is starting to feel like this was the real story of what the meetings happening at Big Ten headquarters were actually about. Because we're not getting much about the actual CFP business. We're getting a whole lot about realignment.
Interesting. All righty, sir. I'm going to let you go. I probably got more phone calls.
I bet you do. I'll let you go here.
You guys are going to have a big show tonight, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't know. Bob Thompson's coming on. We'll be talking with him. I was kind of hoping for some big news to come out of this to ask him some questions, but, maybe we do have some big news to ask him about. So it could be a fun one.
Yeah. All righty, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hot Guy, Immaculate. So, I know we got new people coming in the chat constantly. Big story broke. Post and Courier, South Carolina. We went through it. I'll just go through it real quick again. Sapakoff, Gene Sapakoff, Clemson's ACC departure may be sooner as the Gamecocks fret. It talks about how the Clemson football program is struggling a little bit, but that's not the main part of the story. School administrators indicated an announcement about a Clemson bolt from its growing financial disadvantage in the ACC. Could be going along with Florida State, North Carolina, and perhaps another ACC school with an announcement soon. Ryan Thomas, the floor is yours. Holy smokes, big day in college football.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to need some, I'm going to need some whiplash, some compensation for whiplash from the ACC schools. I think it's interesting, and I 100% agree with Ryan's previous call. He made some excellent points, as he always does. I think it's very interesting. As I pointed out in my previous call the other day about kind of the shell conference idea, that I think that could very much still be in play if it was thought about. And maybe, the reason why it didn't happen before is because they were still lining up their ducks on a bunch of things there. But I find it very interesting, and I think he's exactly right. I think that, I would not be surprised to see UNC and UVA get an SEC invite. It gets them into Virginia and North Carolina. Those are big markets. Academically, I can see, the president, they may, that's definitely where I think the move is probably going to be headed for the SEC, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. As far as what kind of develops out there, today's a big day because, as Brian pointed out, something has to be done with this Pac-12 and Washington State and Oregon State situation. That's a lot of money out there on the table, and as it's been pointed out before, is it cheaper just to pay the freight to put them in either the ACC or the Big 12 or however they want to do it, and then to have to fork out, essentially $360 million a year or whatever amount that's going to be to those two schools and whatever, future amalgamism of G5 that they add. So, I certainly think that some things are going to get decided this week. And I think that this article, I don't think it's a coincidence that sort of coincides with the discussions that are happening right now in Chicago. I think they certainly want to get this figured out. They want to, get the table set, figure out where everybody is, so they can sort of get the ball rolling and, resolve the situation now, and then, set the table for the discussions that will occur for 2026, and at least have sort of a starting point. So, this doesn't surprise me at all. And, I don't know, but I think as I mentioned the other day, the settlement between Texas and OU is very telling, because if you recall, and you've heard before, and I think Ken Assad pointed it out in an article, is the ACC grant of rights was based on the Big 12. And the legal rationale is the same, and sort of, even though the exit penalty, is different, the whole concept is essentially the same. So, if you get enough ACC schools bolting, I think that's going to seriously add more fuel to the fire. So, I would not be surprised to see, the defections come in a large number, Greg. I wouldn't be surprised to see if it was either the shell conference theory that I had, or if you have 4, bolt pretty quick. But I think it's more likely, and I'm still going to go back on my conspiracy theories here. I still think that you're going to get that Magnificent Seven plus 1 or 2 more, saying that they're going to go out and form their own conference and, get everything settled and cleared with the ACC and borrow what money they need to survive until they're, touchable by the Big Ten and the SEC. And, that'll go from there. But, I think things are lining up right now that's where it looks like it's heading. And
we have another reporter, a respected reporter. I haven't gotten any pushback in 7.5 hours on this article. Doesn't mean I'm not going to get it, Ryan. Just doesn't. I haven't gotten it yet. And in the article, it's not really any discussion in and around these schools getting together and forming their own conference, right? It's always, Clemson still might be a possibility for the Big Ten, but they rather go to the SEC. That's what these administrators, these sources are telling. So we haven't really gotten any steam or smoke about the theory of this new conference being formed with the Magnificent Seven schools. It's an interesting theory, interesting conspiracy, but we haven't gotten any smoke lately on it, right? So we'll see.
And that's the thing, though. But keep in mind that legal counsel for the SEC is probably going to have similar reservations that the Big Ten had, because they don't want to get sued any more than anybody else does. And I think that's they have maybe part of the battle right now for Sankey is getting some of those SEC schools to sign off and bringing in certainly they would sign off in North Carolina and UVA. But the reality is they're going to have to have that come to that existential Big Ten in the backyard come to Jesus moment that I've talked about so
Yeah.
often on the show.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's just trying to get Florida to realize, hey, we got to take either FSU or Miami. We can't allow both to go to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And, I think.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I apologize again, Ryan. And I apologize to everybody. I've interrupted everybody, but there's so much going on. Cameron B, Super Chat, thank you so much for your generosity once again to this channel. Why does everyone assume the SEC will expand? The conference is pretty much perfect as currently constituted. I see 2 additions at most, UNC and UVA. Cameron B is agreeing with you, Ryan. The UNC UVA additions to the SEC has to look pretty appetizing to Sankey and to the ESPN network, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, though, I think that they also have to recognize, and I'll just agree with Cameron on this, is, if the Big Ten gets into the SEC's backyard, that's not good for the Big Ten. Not Big Ten, excuse me. That's not good for the SEC. And that's just, there's a preventive measure there that, at some point you have to swallow your pride and accept, an FSU and a Clemson, if it means, retaining those brands. And as I've said before, the networks aren't necessarily as focused as much on, people think that it's about basically being cheap and being stingy on cash. No, it's about value maximization, and it's about getting those matchups that create the most amount of value and the combinations of matchups that create the most value. And Clemson does that by going to the SEC. There's no doubt about that. And I think it's sort of something people need to realize. And there may be some oppositional, there might be some institutional opposition to bringing in a few of those schools. But at the end of the day, I think, like I said, I don't know why in the world you would want to let a conference that has 3 OTA free channels on the air network come into your backyard in addition to their own cable network and have a $25 million advantage on you to recruit in your backyard and have, immense exposure. I don't know why in the world you would want, that. I mean, I'm sorry, your ego and arrogance, Greg, think it can be big, but you know what? That kind of mentality, giants get slain all the time, Greg. And, I mean, I think it would be stupid for them. I think it would be absolutely stupid for the SEC to do nothing. Because if they do that, they're going to end up, they'll crater. And I think that they may not be so lucky when ESPN redoes their deal the next time. So, that's just my crazy theory, but I think I'm crazy like a fox here.
Okay.
But take care and great show and have a great week.
Appreciate it, sir. Thanks, Ryan. Great phone call. A lot of great comments in the comment section. If you want to make sure I post your comment, hit that $, small donation goes a long ways with this YouTube channel. Thank you.
From
ABO Prep Course 100.
Mr. Soap is on the line. The floor is yours.
Well, hello, Greg. It's great to hear from you, and it's great to talk with you.
Thank you, sir.
I have the honor of being able to continue to say what I've said from the beginning, and stay true to my initial thoughts, which was Notre Dame and Miami to the Big Ten, and North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, and UVA to the FCC.
Okay.
I think the question the interesting thing about the report today is why now? In my mind, why now are they announcing this?
Well, they're not announcing it. They're not announcing it. It's just that
you're right.
It's just that the Post and Courier reporter dropped this information today, and he had it last week, according to what I read in the article. But go ahead.
Well, that's the point. Yeah, why is this happening now? And when we kind of expected it to happen, maybe next year. And I think it has a lot to do with that vote that went down to allow the two California schools and SMU into the ACC, because that throws off the voting in the ACC when those three schools are going to vote to keep the conference together by whatever means necessary. That means that they have to do something. They being the schools that want to leave, they have to do something while they have the vote on their side before these other schools come in. So I think that might have actually moved up that timeline. Another thing that I found interesting in that, Greg, was that North Carolina State did not stay true with Clemson. With North Carolina in that vote. There'd been a lot of talk about North Carolina and North Carolina State would not do anything separate from each other. Well, I think that changed when that vote took place. So any thought that North Carolina and North Carolina State would be moving together, I think that's out the window now. As far as when we hear talk about this new league, I think what I've been saying from the get-go is that it's not necessarily a new league. It is the term that they're using to dissolve the existing league, which is more of a co-op, not a league. In this event, the teams would come together and pool all of the departing teams would pool together their funds that they were getting from the different leagues, from the media funds from the Big Ten and the SEC, pool them together and divide them evenly and among the other schools who agreed to be part of the Magnificent Seven that maybe ended up in the Big 12. Specifically, I think you're talking about Pitt, Virginia Tech, Louisville, and Duke in the as part of the Big 12. But so that what I think is going to transpire, and I've been saying it all along, is you're going to see 20 teams, three leagues of 20 teams, two divisions in each league, an upper division, a lower division. Each division has 10 teams, so there's 9 games in each division. The automatic bid would remain in the upper division. I just think that that Washington and Oregon, anybody who's saying we have to do something with them, they don't seem to remember University of Houston, TCU, Rice, and SMU, who were left for dead when the Southwest Conference merged with the Big Eight at the time. They were just thrown to the wolves. So I have no sympathy. I'm being from the South. I have no sympathy for Washington State and Oregon State, and I think they might have saved themselves actually with the idea of a relegation league. If they can come up with a relegation league where they might be able to retain their automatic membership or automatic bid to the championship or to the playoffs. But that's it for me, Greg. I just wanted to pass along that I think it's falling into place for the reason that the timeline has been moved up.
Got it.
And on a personal note, my sympathies to you and your lovely mom and beautiful wife and family. And that's great talking to you, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that kind words. Thank you very much. Crab cakes and football. Big Ten goes to 21. Florida State, Miami, and Notre Dame Fighting Irish with UNC is a backup. Thank you for your super chat. Thank you for your continued generosity to this channel. Crab cakes and football. That makes sense. I do have a hard time believing North Carolina is a backup to anybody because that is very, very, very valuable property.
Call from
Kansas State fan.
Kansas State fan is in the house. The floor is yours. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
A lot of chaos.
Yes, sir.
If you were to ask me that the Colorado news back in the summer was just the tip of the iceberg, but I would have been like, okay, hold your horses. I didn't think things would be moving this quickly, but here we are. It's crazy times. It's crazy times.
Yes, sir.
I want to hear your opinion on this, Greg. And I was just kind of thinking about it when I believe it was either Ryan or Immaculate. One of us two pointed out about UNC and Virginia only to the SEC. Instead of Virginia, how would you think about possibly SEC doubling down on the state of North Carolina and going after North Carolina and either NC State or Duke? They have a lot of TV viewers out there. You're wanting to talk about one of the biggest basketball rivalries out there as well. Duke would just bolster the SEC academics tremendously as well. And just looking at the state of Virginia and Virginia football, Virginia basketball is down a little bit as well. I think it's a little bit more logic to consider maybe Duke or NC State over Virginia at this point. But what's your thoughts or opinion on that?
Just my opinion. I would deem it most probable that the SEC would target a North Carolina-Virginia combo over a North Carolina State combo. To have the SEC network sold at the highest level in the state of Virginia over doubling down in North Carolina is probably more advantageous for the SEC and their schools. However, I take the theory that North Carolina State has a little bit more political power than I think most people realize. I take that very serious. I'm not, while North Carolina State is probably not first tier or second tier targets of the SEC and the Big Ten, I do think they have a long shot, but it's a live shot opportunity to land in the Big Ten of the SEC. A long shot. Don't get me wrong, a long shot, but I think it's a live shot because what I've been told, yes, North Carolina State wields a lot of internal political capital power inside the capital of the state of North Carolina. And that is serious. That is somewhat the same with Virginia Tech and Virginia. North Carolina State does have a live shot, I believe, at landing in one of the two big in the Big Ten of the SEC, but it's a long shot. But go ahead, continue.
Okay, so heading into another subject as well, and you were talking about the NBC deal with Notre Dame being uncertain. It looks like the Irish, the time may finally be coming. Like the stars may finally be aligning where Notre Dame joins. I mean, that's more rare than seeing a unicorn existing as well. But you mentioned Notre Dame being in the fifth row. You also have NBC. You also have NBC in the Big Ten. The partnership is just continuing to grow bigger and bigger for their sake.
Yes.
And we're hearing news out of Clemson, Florida State. If I'm a school like Louisville or Pittsburgh, who has ties to some of these schools, you got to be thinking to yourself, oh boy, I mean, these schools are trying to get out as fast as they can, and not knowing about where we're going to end up. Do you think they should, at this point in time, reach out to the Big 12 and try to see what potential options are out there? And I don't know. I'm kind of looking at this from an outsider's perspective because I haven't gotten into the ACC saga a whole lot. I mean, I just found out just a month ago that Cal, Stanford, and SMU were joining the ACC. I mean, I'm just way outside of it, but do you have any thoughts on Louisville?
I think there's already been plenty of indirect, not direct, but indirect talks with Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech with Big 12 connections. Maybe not anybody in Yormark's office, but look, let's be honest. When Yormark was trying to expand his conference with the 4 corner schools, there was so much communications going on. Not with the Utah athletic director directly talking with Yormark, although that eventually did happen. We're talking indirect talks, representatives from these schools. There was, and I'm not going to say the name, but there was a big time mega, super duper mega booster that lives out in the state of Arizona that was doing some communications with Yormark in regards to the Arizona schools. So it's happening. Louisville, Pittsburgh, talking with the Big 12, just in case a few years down the road, if this implosion happens. And then Louisville and Pittsburgh are going to have to make a decision. Where is there more value in a rebuilt, refilled, backfilled ACC with an ACC network that's going to keep their Autonomy 4 status, or should they go to a bigger, larger Big 12 that's going to have at least 18 schools with those 2 schools as the additions? At this point, I would put my chips in the table that Louisville and Pittsburgh would decide to go to the Big 12 because there's value there for those 2 schools. Yeah, I mean,
you want to talk about the rivalries being rekindled. I mean, Pittsburgh and West Virginia, what was it, the Week 3 contest? That showed a lot of significant TV viewership as well. So you're getting a big rivalry, kind of similar to Utah and BYU. When the Utes join the Big 12, I guarantee you the Holy War is going to get a lot of eyeballs.
Yes, yeah. And not just eyeballs, but tickets sold, right? I mean, Pittsburgh can now fill up their stadium once every 2 years, having a conference home game with West Virginia, right? West Virginia the Mountaineers love to go to Pittsburgh and fill up that stadium, and Pittsburgh can get some more juice out of the Cincinnati rival, I think it'd be more valuable for Pittsburgh and Louisville, and let's be honest, it's one of the reasons why Yormark has decided to clamp it down right now and just keep a 16-team conference and not go bigger out in the West, because he's given his conference an opportunity to eat at the ACC table if the implosion does happen here in the next few years.
And I want to mention this real quickly as well, and this is no shot toward several of my Big 12 colleagues. Drake Foley does Locked On Big 12 stuff. With BYU, Nathan Bomber, Big 12 Mafia, they do a great job. They're trying to really push the needle on Oregon State and Washington State joining the Big 12. I'm just not seeing any scenario on how that's going to go down. I think at this point, Yormark is kind of looking to the east. Now, he's not going to be the ultimate aggressive kind of mindset like he had with the Pac-12 schools this summer, but I think it would be. I don't think you're going to benefit too much from expanding just a little further just to get Oregon State and Washington State. I think that would just be more from a network's influence and not the conference influence.
I believe at this point, an Oregon State, Washington State would give more value to the ACC in their media networks than they would give to the Big 12 at this point in time.
And especially with Florida State and Clemson leaving, that would open the gate for you would be able to kind of go through some renegotiating and stuff. So, all right. I think that's all I need to ask, Greg.
Appreciate it, man.
Keep it up. I'm looking forward to continuing to hear more of your coverage.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Great call. Why would any ACC schools go to the Big 12? A lateral move at best when the ACC can remain strong. I don't think it's going to be a slam dunk in any by any means, Elliot. But I think if the ACC implodes, I think there's going to be a strong look from Louisville and Pittsburgh to join the Big 12. I think there's a lot of reasons why they would at least take a strong look at that. And of course, it depends on who the ACC is going to be able to backfill with. I don't think the ACC is going to be able to poach from the Big 12. One of the things that makes the ACC unable to expand with schools that give more value to the conference is that ACC grant of rights. It goes on to 2036, which means the ACC at this point is not going to be able to negotiate a new Tier 1 to Tier 2 contract. Your mark in 2029, going into 2030, your mark's going to be able to get on the phone with ESPN and Fox and say, okay, our exclusive window is now. Fox and ESPN is going to have an exclusive negotiation window.
Call from
Crab cakes and football.
Crab cakes and football. Can you hold on just 1 second?
Yes, sir.
So your mark's going to be able to call ESPN and Fox. They're going to get together. Okay, this is our exclusive window. Let's negotiate a new TV deal. And then in those talks, your mark, if it hasn't happened already by 2029-30, he's going to be able to say, what about Pittsburgh? What about Louisville? Adding the state of Pennsylvania, adding the state of Kentucky into our footprint. I mean, your marks, again, is going to have leverage, a different type of leverage, but leverage over the ACC, just like when he got the deal done soon with ESPN and Fox and was able to get that leverage over the Pac-12. It could play out the same way. I think Louisville and Pittsburgh would look hard at joining the Big 12. Crab cakes and football, Maryland, still undefeated Terrapins. The floor is yours, good sir.
Hey, how you doing today, Greg? Hey,
doing good, doing very good.
Doesn't Virginia Tech and Virginia have where they're supposed to be tied together through the legislature? They're not allowed to go to separate conferences. They have to stay together.
Well, I don't know about if it's. I don't know if there is legislation that ties them together, but
I think there is.
But that very well could be. But the state of Virginia's Attorney General came out a couple months ago in public and stated, if the University of Virginia gets to go to the Big 12, he didn't say, I don't think he said SEC or Big 10 in particular, but this is what he was driving at. If Virginia does a conference realignment with the SEC or the Big 10, Virginia Tech needs to be part of that as well. Not necessarily going to the same conference, but they would if Virginia would go to the SEC, Virginia Tech would have to go to the SEC or the Big 10. He's not going to allow just one of them to go to one of the Power 2 conferences. Both of them would have to be included. That's what the Attorney General said. Now, how much power does he have? What type of, how big a threat is that? I don't know. But that's what I know. I don't know about any legislation. If somebody has some legislation information they can send to me, please send to my Flug Empire Twitter account. I'd like to take a look at it. But go ahead. The floor is back to you, sir.
Because and I know that the SEC and the Big Ten, they're only looking for teams that are going to move the needle. They're not just going to invite anybody. So as much as Florida State and Clemson would move the needle for someone like the Big Ten, they're probably not going to move the needle as much for the SEC because they've already got South Carolina and they've already got Florida as in their footprint. So it'd probably be some defense there, but I don't think that would be it would be more even, sum zero kind of thing. So everybody's talking about UNC, which UNC has reasons to go to both leagues. So if UNC decides to go to the Big Ten, everything from lacrosse, which is something that the SEC doesn't offer from that I know of anyway, and all their championships in history there, and the educational, being part of the AAU, I think it's called, and everything else. But they're tied to Duke. I don't even know if they would be willing to break off from Duke. I think Duke would have to. I just don't see them two separating from each other. And so that's even another wrench. So if the number is 20, or as you read in my tweet earlier, or my response earlier, 21 for the Big Ten because of Notre Dame, even if you go to 21 each, that only leaves 3 spots for the Big Ten. That leaves 7, 4, 5. 5 for the SEC. So I think Pitt. I do think if they're able to split them, I do think UVA. Then I think I'll go ahead and give UNC to the Big Ten for that one reason that I mentioned, which will give NC State to the SEC, and then I think it comes down to Clemson going to the SEC, and then I think that leaves Miami and Notre Dame, or impossible FSU. I don't know what FSU is going to do. They can go either way. But if FSU goes, I think Miami stays. If Miami goes, I think FSU might actually end up staying. So that's how I think that goes. This is a numbers game, and not everybody's going to be invited. Everybody wants to be invited, but not everybody's going to be invited.
Yeah.
It's going to be, and you don't turn the SEC down, and you really don't turn the Big Ten down.
Yeah.
So and funny thing is, both conferences have been turned down at least one time in history.
Oh, sure.
So I don't think they realized what they were going to be today when they did it, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
So, that's all I really had for you. So if I had to come out, if we're going to stop at 21, and it makes sense because Notre Dame's a wild card, they're not going to wait on Notre Dame. So I think they're the 21st team. If I was, and if we cannot land UNC, then I think we try to wrap up Florida, get FSU and Miami, and then wait on Notre Dame and let that be the final 3.
Got it.
You can't really leave anything on the table, but SEC trying to grab them 2 Virginia schools, let's say if they are together, then you got to grab them. If they are separate, then you can just grab one and leave the other. But, and then get North Carolina. That's new property, new territory, new eyeballs, new everything.
Yeah.
So I think that would be more valuable to the SEC. So, all right, man.
All right, Crab Cakes Football, thank you, sir.
Not a problem.
Great call. Great calls. Phone lines open 763-260-1333. Big news today. Post and Courier from Gene Sapakoff. Clemson. Hold on a second. The moderator, the one who rules with an iron fist, is in the studio. What do you got to say, honey?
I just wanted to tell you that I just come from my walk.
Oh, you just got back from your walk. You've been watching the show the whole time, though, right?
Of course.
Yes. The moderator has been watching the show the whole time. Big news today, if you're just joining us. Gene Sapakoff from the Post and Courier, South Carolina. Clemson, sooner rather than later, making an announcement that they're going to bolt the ACC in schools that could be coming with them is Florida State, North Carolina, perhaps another school, and more. That's coming right out of the article. We provide a link to the article in the description box. Wow, big news. Now, of course, nothing official has happened. And I also want to say the following. This isn't going to mean much to many of you. This means a lot to me, though. It is 3 o'clock Eastern.
Call from
Steve.
Steve, can you hold on just 1 second, sir?
Sure.
Appreciate it. This means a lot to me. It won't mean much to you all, but it's 3:04 Eastern Time. It's 2:04 Central Time. I have not received any pushback, literally none, from the article written by Sapakoff on the Post and Courier. And normally, if this wasn't deemed legit or if there was an obvious something's wrong here, I would get a pushback well before 8 hours of this. Well before. I from multiple people, I've gotten none. Now, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And there are people scrambling. A couple hours ago, there are people, everyone's checking it out, yet no pushback. I think that's important to note. Steve, my friend, what's going on? The floor is yours.
Well, I want to take this in just a little bit different direction, Greg.
Alrighty.
And it's from the Notre Dame standpoint.
Okay.
And shoot holes in this as I go, if you want, if you can, if you need to. I see them with basically three options. Obviously, their number one option from their point of view is get the money they think they're worth from NBC, correct? And
yes.
Life goes on as an independent, and everything's good. And they're still going to have their vote at the CFP and all that good stuff. Option number two is NBC says, nah, Notre Dame, we're not going to give you any money because we're not going to give you what you want because we now have pretty good deal with the Big Ten and working out pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You want to come in and make Big Ten money, you're going to be on NBC, you're going to be on CBS, you're going to be on Fox, okay? And their third scenario is, obviously, they just say, okay, here we go, Big Ten. We're going to come in for all sports. And I think, now this is where I want you to shoot holes in this if I'm completely off base. And they say, we're completely leaving the ACC. We know we play hockey in the Big Ten, but we're bringing football and all of our other sports to the Big Ten because we couldn't get what NBC wants. Now we can make Big Ten money, okay? We don't have a contract with the ACC any longer. We pay our exit fee. Is this what ultimately FSU and Clemson and maybe the other 5 or 7 or how many they are waiting? Are they just saying your move, Notre Dame?
No, I think it's a two-prong attack. One is they would love if Notre Dame would act first, right? Because it would weaken, because they could get out of the ACC network portion of the grant of rights. Notre Dame is not connected to the Tier 1, Tier 2 grant of rights portion of the contract. It would make everything a lot easier for the other ACC big brand schools if Notre Dame acted first. But I think there's definitely the second prong, and I don't think it's dissolution of the conference. I think it's basically a whole bunch of schools, as basically described in the Post and Courier article today, multiple schools, strength in numbers, doing a bull rush on the ACC, asking for a settlement to get out of the conference. So it's that scenario and or the Notre Dame scenario. Either one of those will work, or at least perceived to be potentially successful from the eyes of North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State. So I don't think it's either, there's only one option. I think those are two options. multiple schools, bull rush, ACC settlement, or the or Notre Dame leaving first to weaken the grant of rights. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I just wanted your point of view on, all the scenarios. Now, I have not anybody telling me anything.
Yeah.
But what I have to believe is every school in college football right now has an inkling and has more information, not even an inkling. They have a bit of information on what's going on with NBC and Notre Dame, right? They know.
Yeah.
They don't know all the details, but they know. They know some things.
Yeah.
Can we make that assumption?
Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, is Clemson, FSU, let's just take those two, are they saying, look, Notre Dame, we know you can do what you want, but we also know where you're sitting right now, and it's probably having less leverage than you ever had.
Yes.
So make a decision, and then we're going to make our decision, and then everything starts falling into place.
Yes. I think that's what's going on. And you said it a lot better than I just did. And I have over the last couple of days. I think everything is kind of collapsing on itself, right? I think everybody, at least the perception is, boy, Notre Dame might not get that deal with NBC because NBC would value Notre Dame more as a Big Ten member, right? So then everything kind of drifts off to that. Now there's a little bit of weakness there. There's enough schools that looks like they're going to bull rush the ACC. I think everything is working in concert with each other. Not that it's a coordinated type of thing, right? But let me say this, Steve. Getting back to your comment about schools kind of have an inkling and knowing things. Remember last year, and I can't remember when, but it was 2022. Remember Jack Swarbrick of Notre Dame said this in public. This was even before it was officially announced that USC and UCLA were leaving to the Big Ten on June 30th. This was in the spring. This was in April. I got it now. It was in April of 2022. Jack Swarbrick of Notre Dame said, a lot of these schools, we're talking about the biggest brand schools, are going to have to figure out there's two orbits that they're going to have to figure out who they're going to circle around. Big Ten or the SEC. He said that long ago, and Jack Swarbrick was talking about Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State. He was talking about those schools when he said it because he has conversations with these guys, right? So, anyways, go ahead, Steve. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to point that out.
I want to hear your point of view.
Yeah.
Now, you brought something up early in the show, and you brought it up before. If there's a settlement, whatever the number is, for these teams to leave, where nothing is going to be litigated, nothing's going to go to court.
Yeah.
There's got to be remainders of the ACC saying, we just hit the lotto. Correct?
What was the last word you said? Remainders of the ACC.
They just hit the lottery. They just hit the lottery.
Yes. If I think that the important part of that lotto ticket is there has to be something written on the bottom of that lotto ticket that says we can rebuild the ACC, backfill it, and keep our autonomy for status.
That and maybe can I add, Greg, that within their agreement with ESPN and the ACC network, that ESPN can't come in and say, hey, let's look at the numbers here. You guys have lost some eyeballs. We could renegotiate.
Yeah, they might lose on that one, right?
Yeah.
Their media money's going to go down some. The money they would get from the ACC network would definitely go down some. But overall, they'd still come out ahead, you know.
You would think if it's $250 million each, if that's what they settle on, which seems like a low number.
Yeah.
And 4 of them leave. That's $1 billion.
That's $1 billion. Yep.
I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. You know, so to me, and I guess getting back to what I first said when I called, to me is Notre Dame holds the key to maybe how all this is going to play out, but they don't have near the strength in negotiations like they've had in the past, and everybody realizes that.
Yes. At least it's perceived that way. That might not be reality. I might be wrong. The people I talk to might be wrong. But that is the perception. True.
Yeah. Now, one last thing I'm going to leave you with. A little bit serious, but not, Bavak was set at NBC. He's probably not in the negotiations because that would be that just wouldn't be the way things. That'd be a conflict of interest if he's in the NBC Notre Dame negotiations. But would you think he's sitting in his office and calling Father Jenkins once in a while and say, "Hey, word I'm getting set at my desk because this ain't going good for our side. Come when he takes over June 1st or July 1st, this is not going good, Father. This is not going good. Better rally the troops and see what we can do." You think that could happen?
Yes.
Yeah. That's another thing I think that people are missing is Bavak was sitting there at one job and going to have another job with the company or with the university that his company that he currently works for. He's not doing in direct negotiations, but he's got to be in the ear of the people at Notre Dame at times.
Yeah.
And saying, maybe you guys ought to rethink everything right now if you're talking strictly money.
Yeah.
And being a TV guy, being a guy in the media, I mean, you look at your mark, you look at Petiti, Bavaco's going to say, "Hey, these guys have made moves because of this, and this regarding the media. We got to start thinking about that." That's just kind of my wild scenario. But anyhow, Greg, I'll leave you with that.
Appreciate it, Steve. Bearcat Steve.
Appreciate your opinions. That's why I call you.
Yeah, interesting days ahead, sir. Interesting days, months. Holy smokes.
I think it's just happening a lot faster than most anticipated.
Yep. And I've taken the L on that. I'm going to continue to take the L on that. No question about it.
I didn't think we would hear this much during the season, Greg.
Yeah.
So,
all righty, sir.
Football? All right.
Thanks for the call. Beautiful. Again, I want to show you guys something here. I want to show you guys something. Give me a moment. Give me a moment, everybody. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. The College Football Playoff Management Committee shelved any talk of format changes to the expanded 12-team field. They're opting instead to continue to wait to see what the future of the gutted Pac-12 will look like. This has just been reported by Heather Dinich of ESPN. Following another summer of sweeping conference realignment, only Washington State and Oregon State will be left to determine the future of the Pac-12 in 2024 and beyond. The NCAA gives conferences a 2-year grace period when they no longer meet membership requirements before changes are needed. But the notion of a 2-team league competing in the college football playoffs has its decision makers in a holding pattern on the future format. Hancock, who has spent 5 decades in college athletics, called it the most unthinkable scenario. One thing that happened that I never would dreamed would ever happen, happened, Hancock says. It's totally weird and everybody knows it. So they think it looks like, look, for 2024, at this moment, it's 6+6 model. Will there be a 2-team conference in Washington State and Oregon State, which will be recognized by the NCAA, but will it be recognized by the College Football Playoff Management Committee? We'll figure that out later. However, I want to get to something else before we get to your comments and phone calls. Give me a moment here. It looks like I lost it. No, I got it back. Let me show you this, ladies and gentlemen. Let me show you this. This is Larry Williams, Clemson Tiger Illustrated. He put this out at 12:16 p.m. Subscribers to TigerIllustrated.com know that since May-August, we have written that the attempted succession for the ACC union is likely to commence during the 2023 season. 3 days ago, Larry Williams, a respected writer, we followed his pieces, wrote that it's likely to happen in October. Now, if you go through this Post and Courier article from Gene Sapakoff, and we've been through it. We went through the whole article. I can show you the images right here. We went through this. Okay? I'll try to find it. Right? Let me see if I can find it. There's an indication. Okay. How soon? This is part of the article. I need everybody to listen on this. This is the point I tried to make earlier today. How soon? Sooner than later, a Clemson senior administrator said last week when asked about a timetable. Last week. Today is Wednesday. So, the Post and Courier, Gene Sapakoff had this information, or at least some of this information, that he could show publicly. In an article today, he had it last week. Okay? You see that? Last week. That's very important. Very important, because if you go into Larry Williams, a Tiger Illustrated, 3 days ago, we wrote that it's likely to happen in October, where Clemson makes the announcement. It's September 27th. So Larry Williams had this information from sources. Post and Courier had this information from sources last week. In in the Post and Courier article, it says sooner rather than later. Soon, 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 soon. Stay tuned, it said. Very soon, stay tuned. And we're looking at, not today, September 27th. Now, so these are two very respected people in the Clemson community, or at least in a newspaper, Post and Courier. And then you have Larry Williams, who's got all the credentials, all the, people are not questioning Larry Williams on this. This is the information that they received. And then, of course, I get the information at 6 o'clock this morning. We're at 8 hours and 25 minutes in, and I got nothing. I've got nothing. I got no pushback on this article. Nothing. None. And if I had any little bit of pushback, any little doubt, I would report it to you all. That's why this morning, I don't know what time, on Twitter, I said, I'm working on it. I'm working on the Clemson story. Most people didn't know what I was talking about. And no pushback. And I'm going to work on this story once this live show is over. We're going to stay here as long as it's needed. As many, if you want to keep calling in, call in. But we've got multiple Clemson. We've got multiple people saying the same thing and no pushback. Multiple sources told Post and Courier. Then you got Larry Williams saying what he said this afternoon on Twitter. What he wrote 3 days ago on Tiger Illustrated. And he's given it a date stamp of sometime in October. Post and Courier says this is going to happen very, very soon. Well, shoot. October is 4 days away. Now, again, I leave you this question. According to the Post and Courier, and I'll try to post it here. I'll try to find it, the exact spot. Give me a second. There it is in the paragraph. Second paragraph. Look at your telephone. Look at your TV screen. Well, however you're watching college football's peek around the corner. Look at the second paragraph. School administrators, more than one source, indicate an announcement about Clemson bolting is coming soon. In this article, we don't see the word October, but Larry Williams, Tiger Illustrated, says October. And probably along with Clemson is going to be Florida State. It's going to be North Carolina. Those three for sure. And we're looking at another ACC school or more. And I think it's fair to say that whoever's going to be in this announcement, whether it be all together or one right after the other, there really is no difference. But if we get 4 different school announcements in 4 separate days saying, we want an ACC settlement, we want an ACC settlement, we want an ACC settlement, 4 schools right in a row, 5 schools right in a row, 6 schools right in a row, are all together, each and every one of those schools that announced this, because this is risky. You're saying, hey, we're out, we want a settlement. Whatever school is in this mix, behind the scenes, they have some sort of positive talks, discussions, indirect talks with the Big Ten and the SEC, or both. For many of these schools, both. They have to have something in their heads that says they've got a landing spot. So, and I don't think we're going to get any schools. Now, this is my strongly held opinion. I don't think we're going to get a school saying, yeah, we're ready to bolt. That haven't had any positive talks with the Big Ten and the SEC. Nothing officially done. Of course not. That's not how these conferences work. You got to officially send in your application, and then the school's not going to officially do that until they know that the conference is going to be officially accept your invitation. But I can't believe I'm saying this, but it looks like this thing is we're in Act 4 today. And I don't know if there's going to be an Act 5 before October, but October, the impact of this story is going to make August 4th look like child's play. And August 4th was historic. That's what we're looking at right now. Richard L., PATC's Mr. Buffalo. Thank you, Greg, for putting in the work today. Thank you, Richard. Thanks for everybody coming on in. I appreciate it. I appreciate the super chat. Appreciate your generosity to the channel. You guys are the ones that keep this channel going with your donations. We don't do memberships. We don't do the other things that other people do. We do have a merchandise store. Give it a visit. But we thank you so much for supporting this independent college football YouTube channel. October Sunday. Marketex. He lays it out there. October is Sunday. Thank you, Richard L., Mr. Buffalo, for your generosity. I appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to our Twitter account at Flug Empire. You're going to get notified of our next live show. It could be tonight. It may have to be tonight or this afternoon. As October, as Marketex just said, that's Sunday. Things are heating up too. Well, it's all, even the threat of this happening. We've been talking about this at Peek Around the Corner. The trend line, it's a short trend line, but the trend line was speaking to us. People were telling us, look, the NBC Notre Dame thing, NBC would rather have, basically insisting that Notre Dame become part of the Big Ten, because then Notre Dame can get the money that they need to compete at the highest level of college football and college athletics. This is where it's getting to, ladies and gentlemen. I think and we're not the only ones with this story about Notre Dame and NBC. I'm sorry, we're not the only ones. Okay? We're willing to talk about it. We got the okay to give you a little bit of information, but we're not the only ones sitting on this. Just like Larry Williams wasn't the only one sitting on the Clemson announcement. Post and Courier had it. I think it's all interlocked with each other. One thing is pushing the other thing. Perception. Ted Evans, thank you so much for your incredible generosity to the channel. Holy smokes. Just wanted to help keep the lights on, show some appreciation for all the digging. Gold Dogs bow down to Washington. Thank you, Mr. Evans. I appreciate your generosity to the channel. Thank you so very much. Mark Ruckert, haven't seen Mark in a while. PATC is much watch analytics for all things NCAA and all things college football. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your continued generosity to this channel. Thank you so very much. It's why we keep going, because we have the resources from you all. We're going to be changing out our camera here soon. Thank you so very much and all the people that go to our merchandise store and buying those mugs and t-shirts. Thank you so very much. Marshall University to the ACC conference. I shouldn't laugh, because once this thing happens, once we have these announcements, the negotiations begin. And you got to think the ACC commissioner, he knows it's coming. They just added Stanford, California, SMU to help the numbers. They might have to add in a couple more. And who would those candidates, who would they be? Oregon State, Washington State out west to go with Stanford, California? Or Tulane? Or Marshall? Probably not, but Tulane, South Florida, who knows? Yes, Scott Stevens, did Greg the Heater make his picks this week yet? Yes, we did that last night. I made the picks. The PATC community made the picks. We both, the PATC community and myself, took Louisville -3. We both took Utah +3.5. We both took Kansas +16.5. We both took Kentucky -2.5. I took Syracuse +6.5. The PATC community took Clemson -6.5. I took Colorado +21.5. The PATC community took USC -21.5. We both took LSU at -2.5. I took Duke in my 5-star lock of week 5 +5.5. You all, the PATC community, took Notre Dame -5.5. My record against the spread this year is 16-13-1. The PATC community is 13-16-1. I got to get to 60% to become Greg the Heater. 60% is not 16-13-1. 60% is 18-12. So I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting close. I'm getting close. A lot of comments here. My goodness. Oregon State, Washington State, Tulane, Memphis, South Florida, UConn to the ACC. Devil Frog says UConn to the ACC. Again, UConn's got to be sitting there going, my goodness, when is it our opportunity? When is it our chance to get there? From your lips to God's ears. I'm guessing Richard L. is talking about my Colorado +21.5 points. Yeah, I think they're going to at least backdoor cover. USC's defense, if they're up 28 points with 4 minutes to go, they're not going to stop that last drive down from Colorado to backdoor cover. So I got Colorado Buffaloes. No. You keep asking me that question, Kyle. You're killing me, Kyle. You're breaking my heart. Kyle's breaking my heart every time he asks that question. No. Unfortunately, no is the answer. Wow. So the phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. I'm going to just check on Twitter real quick here. Wow, what a day. What a day. Big news. Big news out of the Post and Courier. Just let me check if there's anything else going on here. Yeah, and I'm not going to, you know what, I'm not going to show that. That's a Gopher thing. We're not talking about the lowly Gophers. Not today. Mel Tucker's going to get fired today. We knew that was going to happen. And this is what Immaculate was talking about. We'll post this up here. CFP commissioner meeting is over. Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick says CFP format change was not discussed at the 2-day meeting, despite a couple commissioners expecting it to happen. The college football playoff format change was not discussed at the two-day meeting. Well, that's what they were meeting for. What did they talk about in Chicago? What did they talk about in Chicago? You see a response here from NKY Bracket Guy. What is going on? What is going on? What are they talking about? All right. What is going on? Swarbrick is lying? According to Grateful Trojan? Yeah. Yeah, it's not looking good. Not looking good. Okay, we're going to shut it down. We've been on the air for 2 hours and 40 minutes. I want to thank everybody for their generous donations, great phone calls, great comments. We're going to shut it down. We could be popping up later tonight. This story now is in full effect. In October, something's going to happen, according to Larry Williams. An announcement could happen soon. Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and others talking about leaving. They're going to leave the ACC. They're looking for a settlement. Holy smokes. The Holy Smokes Theater. The popcorn is popping. The line is forming. People are getting into their seats. On the front of the stage, Florida State is at center stage. Clemson is at the side of the stage. Standing there, pretty close to Florida State. North Carolina's in the front row. The fifth row is Notre Dame. And the sixth row is Tony Petitti and NBC. In the 15th row, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Miami of Florida, and North Carolina State all sitting there ready to see what announcement happens in October. In October with Clemson, with Florida State, with North Carolina, and possibly others. Thank you so much. As the moderator said, thank you so much for your support and attention to the channel. We really appreciate it. I do not say that enough. I do not say that enough. It's very difficult for people to form a community and a YouTube channel where people actually want to come and talk college football. And these numbers, wow, you have blown us away. Thank you for your incredible support. I hope we've done this story justice. We went through the whole article. If you missed it, go back earlier in our live show, read the article. We go step by step, do a complete breakdown. Post and Courier, Gene Sapakoff. Wow, wow, wow. So stick with us here. Before you leave, please subscribe to our channel, smash that like button, and share this video. Word of mouth, college footballs. Peek around the corner. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.